So now we're moving on from the data visualization and the graphic representation of data to another form of expression, which is the theater. And from the climate science and data visualization, we're going to see how theater can actually talk about climate and tell us something about it. And I'm calling Annalisa Brianzi with a big applause. Annalisa will be reading for us, Not Because We're Good by Chris Thorpe, and we will talk about that in a minute. Annalisa.
Thank you. Not Because We're Good by Chris Thorpe. We did this thing not because we're good, not because we're virtuous, or even because we cared. We did it because deep down we know we are selfish, and we know we are lazy, and we know how susceptible we are to lies. Yet, there were evangelists. We even knew some of their names. There were righteous fighters, the people who were all in from the very start. But they were the minority. The rest of us, mostly, just stood there with a vague desire to keep the lights on. It's because it was made easy that we went along, which isn't to say there weren't sacrifices, but we realized making it was easier than the alternative. And yet, it was until the last possible moment that most of us signed on. We only made the changes when we had to. If anything, we did it. In the end, we did it because remembering is hard. And we realized how much of it we'd have to do. We didn't want to remember our bones in the desert. We didn't want to remember panic. We didn't want to remember what happened when the lights went out. We didn't want to remember setting out with just one bag. We didn't want to remember leaving our pets behind. We didn't want to remember walking from our houses for the final time. We did not want to remember guns pointed at the sea. We remembered the boats capsizing. That happened. But in the end, we didn't want to remember when it was us in them. Even then, the desire to somehow keep ourselves together didn't unleash an all-consuming wave of action. It was more a theoretical preference for life over death. There was a time, way back among the decades, when there was still faith in us. If we could only be told in the right way, we'd believe, they said. If there was a magic form of words, in the perfect tone, the right image of a terrible consequence or a shining future, how could it fail to make us more than ordinary? If you want to hear we were good, in the end, then I'll say it, that we chose this, that we all became believers, and this is why it happened. That when the deal was made and the laws were signed, we went out into the streets in joy because we were good and unselfish and we cared. But most of us weren't any of those things. We just wanted to live our lives and only changed because change was made easy. Most of us weren't any of those things. We didn't want to remake the world. We let others change it round us and then lived in it. Of course, some of us have been persuaded, but most of us are quietly drifting Most of us are on the path of least resistance. The effect is the same, though. The thing was done. Some people got to be heroes. Most of us didn't. And we're so fine with that. We didn't notice. We went along with it. Because in the end, most kinds of living are better than most kinds of dying. If the dying we're talking about is ours.